Hello and welcome to Power the Community, where we bring on people from their communities who are leaders, have been leaders, and are doing great things in our community. We want to show you through this podcast how where you are today is not where you have to stay. Now, our guest today grew up here in Washington, Indiana, through a life led by some trouble, some sin, found himself as a convicted felon. Now, however, even though he found himself as there, he didn't stay there. As of today, he is the founder and the lead pastor of Lighthouse Recovery Center right here in Washington and Victory Community Church here in Washington. He's a husband. He's a father. He's a great asset to our community. Guys, please welcome Pastor Pete Aldrich. Pete, it's good to have you.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
Man, we talked about this, I don't know, 3-4 months ago, I think, and finally we're here. So I'm excited about this. Pete, we have known each other for a long time. I think I think it goes back to probably 2004 when we first met. I'd say I just started here at the Powerhouse.
Right.
Your daughter, a year later, I believe, started coming to the Powerhouse, Tiffany.
Right.
And that's kind of how our paths kind of crossed a little bit. And we've kind of kept in contact ever since.
Right.
So what I want to dive into a little bit, Pete, is just I know a lot of people know your name. They know Pete Aldrich, and they see you. You probably can't go into Walmart without spending an hour or two because people just know who you are, right? But I want to really kind of let people in on who you really are, kind of some of where you came from, how you got here. So let's kind of dive into your early childhood. Let me know a little bit about like where were you born, kind of where you grew up.
Tracy, I was born in Greene County in Worthington. It's a little town. If you blink your eyes, you just you're through it. I mean, I'd say it's smaller than Wheatland in some ways, but it's a little town. But I was born there and lived there till about 9 years old. So I think it was about 9 years old. My dad had some problems, and he was a Vietnam veteran and had fell from a silo, ended up with some blood pressure problems, and would have killed him. Killed him, but. Anyway, so we moved to Indianapolis. So we went straight from, out there in the country to the concrete streets of Indianapolis. And it was there from 9 to about 15 that I learned what the streets were about. And at first, I became very suicidal because being used to the country and then living there, I was dealing with some suicidal thoughts. So I'd go home in the summer to Worthington and work for Pioneer in the fields. Yeah. And so worked really hard, was always a hard worker, but little by little, the city started sucking me in. And before long, I went junior high. I was doing pretty good, doing a few things I shouldn't do. But then high school, when I hit freshman year in high school, I went to Tech High School. And back then, the racism and the prejudice was kind of like today, and only what I seen in some ways it was a lot worse because it was just blacks and whites and fighting, and it was just horrifying. And so go to school, and really it messed me up really bad. I've seen a lot of people get hurt, seen people get shot, stabbed. Right. It was just a horrible situation, and the atmosphere of the fear and the adrenaline that would come over you when the riots were going on, teachers getting beat up. It was a mess. And so I had went there with a few friends of mine, and we had got into marijuana and some other drugs, but nothing real big. And so anyway, a friend of mine got shot, and they didn't put it in a newspaper for 3 days, and I had been missing school. And I told my dad that my friend had been shot, and when he called the school, they said nobody had been shot. So that got me, and my dad could lay it on you, and he did. It was this back in the old day. And he laid it on me. And I was at that time I was about 15 years old, and I remember 2 days later it come out in the newspaper and on television. And the next day I couldn't sit down because he laid it on me, and he looked at me and had tears in his eyes, which you didn't see real often. And he come home from work that day, and he had us a house in Canby. So we moved from there to Canby, which is back in the country. And so I'm going to Martinsville School, which is kind of a country school, even though it's a big town, a lot of country kids come. Mm-hmm. But man, the city was in me. So at a snap, I mean, whatever happened, I'd fight, and somebody'd say something, somebody'd do something, somebody's picking on somebody. So before I know it, I'm at the top of the list for the principal, and I get in a big fight, and the principal takes me in, and I even really got whooped really bad. I was a freshman still, and a senior hit me in the back of the head with a book, and I turned around. Last thing I remember saying as I blacked out was, "Hey, you may hit me, but now you got a fight on your hands." And I hit him one time, and that was, I made him mad. And he got me by the hair of the head and put more knots on my head than I could rub. Right. But I just couldn't function because of what had went on in Indianapolis. So we moved from Canby. Our house caught on fire. There was 9 of us in the house at that time. It was my grandma, my grandpa, us 5 kids, my mom, and my dad. I think that's 9. Yeah, somewhere right, maybe more than that.
Fair enough. Yeah,
somewhere around there. Yeah, right. And my best friend Billy was there too. But anyway, the house burned on fire. By the grace of God, everybody got out of the house, and we moved up to Forest Lake, which was over more in Martinsville country. And we lived there for a little while, and things started going different. I could see it. Mom and Dad wasn't getting along. We lived in a little A-frame. Billy went his way. It was my mom, my dad, my grandma, and grandpa. Well, there was no way for them to fit. We had to put grandpa in a nursing home because he was a stroke victim. And that really hurt Mom, and she had some surgeries, and noticed Dad being gone on the weekends. And one day he came, and I heard him talking. I didn't know what was going on. And we loaded up. They said, grab some clothes. So we grabbed some clothes, and 15 years old, we come here to Washington. And I remember pulling up at my aunt's house on Walnut Street, East Walnut, just a few blocks over from Meridian. And my dad let us out, and he drove off. And my mom said, we're going to be staying here with your aunt for a while. And we went in. It was my mom and 5 kids, and she signed up for food stamps and for welfare. And we moved into the West End, and there I learned what the West End was about. And back then, I mean, West End, people look at it now, and it's gentle compared to, when we came. It was wild down there, and parties on every corner, and so I got into that really quick, and nothing to stop me. My dad wasn't there, and my mom, she was into alcohol and different things, and she was gone to the bar, so she really didn't know what was going on. So I got into that and started hanging out with older people, and real, and then my brothers, followed me. My brother Pat and my brother Scott, he was really young then, and so, but he started getting into the same thing, smoking pot, and so life went on. We kind of just hung here, done the things. I quit school, didn't make it through. I think I may have my 9th grade. I don't even know if I got it. Got into it at school, and they took me in. Same talk. Yeah. This has got to stop. We're not going to put up with this here. And so I remember walking out of school. I remember this most sick feeling, man, that I ever felt in my life. And I always tell kids this when they're getting ready to quit school. 2 mistakes I made in my life that were the worst mistakes I ever made. First was leaving God, and second was quitting school. And I remember that gut feeling of knowing I was doing wrong, but also a good feeling in my flesh. Like, yeah, I'm free from school, And so, things just got worse and worse. And, I can't go into the whole story. I mean, there's things I'm leaving out. We was in church and out of church, and a lot of things happened. I knew God from a young child, called to preach at 8 years old, was just birthed on the Pentecostal floors of an old holiness church where people prayed and loved God and, sung and worshiped. 2 or 3 hour services, but anyway, from all that to, we're here in Washington, and, got the partying and stuff, and then end up at about age 20, I found out I had a young girl pregnant. And I remember thinking in my mind that I didn't want to do, my children the way I had been done by my father or even by my mother, even though they turned out in the end to give their lives to the Lord and be awesome people. I didn't want to do that. And so made the decision to get married. And so we got married. We had another child. And man, what I said I would never be and never do, I did. And I said I would never leave my family. I said I would never be like my dad. And I heard T.D. Jakes say a while back, watch out when you're judging your parents, lest you become something worse. And man, I mean, that happened in my life. Me and my wife started having trouble. I was helping at a church here in town. I was preaching. I was doing a little evangelizing. I got married at 20, 21, that area. And then about, 20. And then about, our marriage lasted about 4 or 5 years, and things got really bad. And I ended up leaving the church. And so when I left the church, I went straight to the bars. And one of the things I didn't like to talk about or anybody to bring up is that I was a church and I was a preacher, because I had witnessed to a lot of people. I felt like I would die and be lost and never make it to heaven. I didn't feel any hope. And so the best thing to do was just leave me alone, especially about that. And so I was at about a year, and a friend of mine come over, and we was at the bar. I would go to work all day. Worked on a hog farm outside of town here, and I'd work at the hog farm, and then I would go to the bar. And so I was in the bar one night after about maybe a year, and a friend of mine said, "Hey, you want to come and play cards?" Now it's about 2:00 in the morning. I got to work. I got to be up at work about 6 or 7. Yeah. I'm like, "Dude, I can't do that." He said, "I got something that'll help you." I'm like, "Well, what do you mean?" So I really ain't thinking at the time. So we go down to his house, and everybody's playing cards. About that time they break out a rock, start cutting off lines, and they said, "Here, do this." And man, I felt like Superman. I did a line of that, and I was wide awake, and we got all done partying, and I had to go to work go home, grab my clothes, go to work. And he said, "Here's a little take with you for the day," and with my addictive compulsive personality, before we knew it, I had literally taken over, end up, being the one going, finding the drugs, getting the connections. Everywhere I went, people liked me. It was like a devil hookup. It was like I had traded now from the favor of God to the favor of the enemy. And people would be, "How'd you get in with that dude? He don't let nobody in." And they would contact me. I'd be in their area, contact me, "Hey, come over. So-and-so wants to meet you." And all my friends would be mad, and these people were dealing. One guy was from California. He was bringing in, pounds and pounds and pounds. They all had connections from California, all 3 of my major dealers. And so, things just began to get worse and worse. And I was with a young girl then, and she decided she didn't want to be in it. We had had a little boy, Logan. He's just an awesome kid by the grace of God, And she said, "I don't want to do this no more." And I said, "I don't blame you." We both started crying, and she walked off, and she headed back to church and tried to get in church and raise Logan right, And at the time I had started shooting up. I had a demon spirit in me that, would scream out sometimes in the middle of the night, would scare everybody. Anybody, I don't care who it was, if they was in the house from California, packing guns, crazy, they would freak out like, "What is that noise, dude, when you go to sleep?" I'm like, "Nothing, don't worry about it," But because of my background, I knew that it was a demon spirit. So, things went on, and I had really got into it with the police. I had done some things that I'm really embarrassed of. Had told them that I'd make controlled buys and took their money and made fake buys, and it was really, it's totally embarrassing now. So I was really on their hit list, and I don't blame them. I always say that Kevin Buckley and Todd Church saved my life, man. They chased me everywhere where I went. There they were, and they pulled me over more times, right. And end up in jail quite a few times, always bonding out, doing different things and really getting in deeper and deeper and deeper. And then one day, somebody gives me word they're going to bust the garage that we're dealing out of. And it was a sure thing. And I had a Uzi that I carried on my back, and I had begun to listen to, Gangster's Paradise, and there's a song that's called it talks about, it's Gangster's Paradise, by Coolio, and it's about, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, take a look at my life, realize nothing's left. I've been bumping and blasting so long, even my mama says my mind is gone.
Yeah.
I put that on my phone recording. Back when we had the old landlines and little recorders, I put that on there. My mama called and she chewed me out. You better get that off that phone. Your mama cares, She was in a Pentecostal uproar.
Right.
She was ticked off. And anyway, so we knew that this was going to happen. I had a buddy with me down there, and the police were over in the old baseball field at the West End. They were up the alley. They were all around our place, and we knew what was getting ready to happen. And so I had, and I still have it today, a book where I had planned on shooting some policemen and then standing up and making sure they shot me, and suicide by the police. So and had it all wrote out. Well, about 2 days for that, this little blonde-haired girl come up and asked me if I wanted to go to Indianapolis with her. So we're going to go to Indianapolis that day. And so I'm standing at this door, and it's strange how God works, but I'm standing at this door and I'm thinking, okay, do I want to die today, or do I want to go to Indianapolis with this cute little blonde? So I told my buddy, I said, you take off. And he said, no, I'm not letting you stay here and do this by yourself. I know what you're going to do. And I said, no. So anyway, he would not let me go. He made me run first. So I went one way. He went the other way. He made sure they seen him. Bunch of them took off after him. I took off, hit the railroad tracks, down the railroad tracks, call this girl. We load up. We go to Indianapolis. On the way to Indianapolis, I remember we was talking. And I remember she started crying about something. She had been through a divorce, and I just kind of and just put my hand on her hand. And now I know it'd be crazy for people to believe it, but as crazy as I was into dope, and I sure wasn't into I just wasn't into a bunch of girls. You know what I mean? If I had a girlfriend, that was it. And if I didn't, that was fine too. But I put my hand on hers, or she put her hand on mine. And she said, why is everybody here scared of you? They say you're a maniac. They say you'll shoot somebody, why are people, you seem so nice. And I said, I don't know. And within about, I think 3 weeks, we went to Kentucky and got married. It was the craziest thing. She was, my wife's name's Tammy. She was, prom queen, all this stuff in school, had all this stuff going on. And everybody was against us even seeing each other. I mean, her sisters, her mom, and I don't blame them. I was a mess, but, she was a little mess too, but a lot more of a mess when she got around me, because I had quantities, just unending quantities of methamphetamine and other drugs. But a little bit into our marriage, she came in one day and she said, hey, I'm gonna have a baby. And she thought it would make me excited, which I wasn't excited. My excitement, was there, but also this voice in my head said, how would you have another baby when you've already ruined your other kids' lives? And so instead of making me better, next thing you know, I'm getting worse. She's wanting to get off the stuff, and I'm almost living at the dope dealer's house. I'll make runs and I'll come back and I'm sitting there and I'm shooting up dope, and I mean, my drug dealer told me, he said, Pete, you don't need that much dope, dude. We need to put an IV on you because you just keep shooting it. You keep hitting it. You keep hitting it. I was trying to kill the pain of the past. Kill the pain of what I was doing right then. I got a baby coming and here I am. I don't work. The only way I make money is drug money. And even though you make it, it only makes you feel good for a little bit. You know what I mean? It ain't like working and getting a paycheck. There's a whole difference. The Bible talks about ill-gotten gain. And that's exactly what it was. I may make thousands in one drop, but it was nothing. And so some things begin to happen. Some people remember Larry Clymer. He used to stand out on the corner, with his sign, Jesus saves, and he got in trouble for yelling "Good morning, Jesus" on his front porch
every morning.
So I'm out there under my hood, and I hear something roll up, blah, 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 and I'm underneath the hood of my Blazer, and I I don't even look up, and all at once there's Larry standing, and he said, "Hey, I want to talk to you." I said, "I don't have nothing to say to you, buddy. I like you, but I don't have nothing to say to you," because I knew what he's going to try to do.
Right.
And we wasn't going there. And I remember he looked at me, man, he was ticked off too. And he wasn't the guy to tick off either.
Right.
Because he's the kind of guy to beat you up and get you saved, whatever it took. and I remember he looked at me and pointed his finger, and he said, "In the name of Jesus, I rebuke the spirit of that rock in Jesus' name." And he turned around, got on his motorcycle, and rode off. It still gives me goosebumps today.
Yeah.
I mean, he was speaking directly to the drug of my choice that I was on, that methamphetamine. And then a few days later, here comes the Pentecostal people from over in Vincennes. They've been praying and fasting for 5 days. I go to the door and see who's knocking. I'm like, I ain't letting them freaks in, ain't no way, and they're all standing there, and I'm like, So they go all the way around the house, knocking on the doors, and I'm thinking, I've had police at every door, every window, and this is more scary than that. These are crazy Pentecostal people with anointing oil, and I know they're wanting to pour it on me, and I'm like, I just ain't letting them in. I got a 40 caliber Browning with vest busters, cop killers in my Browning's it's got a laser sight. I mean, it's ready to roll, and I'm scared to death. So anyway, they go to walk off. This just shows you God's prevenient grace. And I never learned about this till I worked the walk to Emmaus. His prevenient grace. They're walking off, and they're getting in a car, and all at once, my heart said, "Don't you feel sorry for them?" And I'm like, yeah, and this is in spite of the demon spirit that's afraid of these people. And I look at them, and they're getting in the car, and I cracked the door. When I did, bad mistake, man. Here they come prancing up there. They come in that front door. I went against the wall, and I'm like all the way against the wall on the other side of my living room. And they step in, and I said, "What do you guys want?" They said, "We want to pray for you." I said, "Don't you touch me." They said, "We want to pray for you." I said, "I will jump out this window right now." And I was ready to take my own window out and be gone. I mean, and finally they're like, they're not going to quit. They're going to pray for me. So I said, "Here's the deal." I said, "You can pray for me. First of all, you don't pray in another language. You pray because you know how the Pentecostals are. I said, you pray in your language." And I said also, just say your prayer, one of you, because they like to pray all at the same time,
right.
So you don't know if how they're praying or what they're praying. So I remember, man, they bowed their heads, and I said, "Okay." And Mary Jo Nighty, which is my spiritual mother, she said, "Father God, in the name of Jesus, I just pray that you show Pete Aldrich that you love him." And I remember hate raising up in me. I remember looking them right in the face. And they told me it literally scared them what they seen. And this voice was saying, "Hey, why would she even torment you when you can't be saved?" And I remember tears rolling down her face. And they said, "Thank you." And I said, "Thank you. See you guys later. You can go now." And they very rudely, and they walked out the door, and I shut the door. Between what Larry did and what they did, the waters of hell. And I remember that was one of the words she used too. "I dry the waters of hell up in his life in the name of the Lord Jesus." Man, my dope dealer is in California. And back then it was the only police show on TV. It was Highway Patrol. They pulled him over. They got him. Highway Patrol. I mean, yeah. I mean, he's on TV, car hauler, check the cars. There's this many pounds in this car, this many pounds, that much in the toolbox, this much cocaine in the door, this many thousands and thousands of dollars in the other door. They found it all. They got it, And so anyway, things just, at this point, man,
dried up.
Yeah. In town, there was no place to get anything. I mean, people was shooting up all kinds of stuff, Some people were just addicted to the needle. I was addicted to the drug. And I used the needle because I couldn't snort it anymore. I done burnt my nostrils out and burnt my throat out. And so people were doing all kinds of things. And so literally the waters of hell dried up. So my buddy Bond's out and he's home. And so I go see him, and he's got some more dope, and I've got some of his, but I have money and I'm wanting a different kind of dope. It's over in Princeton. So we go over there, and we're looking for some crystal. So we buy some crystal over there, and we're coming back, and we seen a policeman, and this policeman, he was at a gas station, and Chris was freaking out. I said, calm down, dude. I thought he was tougher than that. He's a big old boy. I mean, he's a dangerous dude. He was straight from California, streets of California. He was no joke. And he's like, dude, I mess with this cop. He don't play games. He's going to get us. He said he hates my guts. And so we're driving, and I take my pistol and I say, here, put the pistol in the glove box, and I throw my clip all the way in the back as far as I can get it. At this time, I'm not a felon. I've got felonies against me, but I'm not a felon. Haven't been charged. All charges in Washington and all over the place. But so this policeman pulls us over, or he follows us. He turns around about 4 or 5 times and drives off. And then here he comes. Finally, when he pulls us over, I'm standing in the back of the vehicle, and he goes to reach in my pocket. I said, you have no reason to put your hand in my pocket. Don't do that again. And he's like, what you got in your pocket? I said, well, first of all, it's none of your business. Why'd you pull me over? So we end up in this big argument. And he flips out, grabs his nightstick, flashlight, whatever, but hits me about 2 or 3 times with it. At that time, he had put a cuff on one hand. Well, when he did, I jerked the cuff out of his hand, and he told Chris, he said, you just take off walking. So Chris just jumps out of the vehicle and takes off. And I found out later on, that this guy had been violent and he had hurt some people. And he pulled his mace out, the maze man. When he did, I slapped the cuffs in my hand and I walked toward him. I said, if you maze me, I'll beat you to death. And so he's like, he said, oh, back off. And I'm telling you, just don't maze me. And I'm not letting you cuff me. So out of nowhere, here comes police pulling from everywhere. They come up. They say, hey, what's going on here? And I tell him, and he tells him, blood's dripping off my elbow. And, anyway, it was a bad deal. They took me to the hospital, and from the hospital, I went to jail. Got out of jail, was doing weekends here in Washington. I bonded out, I was doing weekends. Well, I went to court in Pike County, or in Princeton, and there's a judge there by the name of Earl Penrod. He was there. He's retired now. Good man, Christian man. I didn't know it because it'd scare you half to death. But he when I went to court, he had me drug tested. And so I didn't know there, when you bond out, you sign a thing that you'll pass drug tests while you're on bond. And a week later, I'm down here in jail, and here comes the same policeman. And I remember when he came in and they took me out, and he said, look at your arms. And I mean, it looked like somebody had just scraped my arms from so many shots. And I remember when he looked at me in disgust, and he put on his white state police gloves, and that's the only way he would touch me to handcuff me and put me in a car. And he puts me in a car and he takes me, but because of his background, he had to have an officer ride with him. And the officer, I can't remember his name, but he's a good Christian man. He's a preacher, and he's from Oakland City, and he rode there with us. And so we're driving, and he's talking to this other policeman about, he's talking to the one that I'm trying not to use the name. But he's talking to him about anger and what he preached last week. He said, are you trying to talk to me? Said, you probably ought to talk to that boy in the back seat. Said, he used to be a preacher. And I flipped out. I cussed them guys. I kicked. I screamed. I went off. And I remember the guy being so nice to me. And he said, Pete, there's hope for every person. There's hope for every person. And I just didn't say another word. I shut up. I went in Gibson County Jail. Went to court, went to bond out, and Judge Earl Penrod, I remember him saying, boy, you got out of everybody else's jail, but you will be in my jail because you're not getting out of it. And there, in that jail, after probably about a week, I had got a rope out of a bag, made a noose out of it. There they have laundry bags, and I was going to take my life. And I wrote my mom a letter that she would understand, to her and the children. And to my wife. And I was sitting out there. Nobody knew I did this. And a Gideon, Bill Badwell, walked in. And I seen him when they come in the door. And there's something about when you're in that much darkness, that when they walked in the door, the light in their eyes, I thought, buddy. I sat on the floor with my head down like this, and I didn't look at him. And no eye contact, man. Yeah. They was as bright as angels. I mean, and they loved God, and they loved the Word of God. It was Bill and Bob, and they loved the Lord so much. And they were asking guys, when guys were being mean to them, and I don't want that. And other guys were like, thank you so much, And so I feel them getting closer, Well, the one's over talking to somebody, and this one's getting, and so Bill Bedwell walks up in front of me, and I got my head down. There's a bench in front of me, a little shorter than this table, and he drops this Bible. I heard it go pow. And he goes, "Hey, read this, for in it you'll find the words to eternal salvation." And man, when that thing hit the table, man, a teardrop rolled down my cheek. I mean, and I tried to stop it. And then the voice said, "These Bibles will help anybody but you, Pete Aldrich." Mm-hmm. And I remember thinking that, and I thought, what am I going to do with this Bible? Well, out of respect, because I was taught as a young boy, open doors for, people, be nice to people. Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. That was me, man. I was a good kid. I really was. I was the kind of kid, if you drop something, I pick it up for you, but anyway, and I thought, I got to take this with me. So when the doors popped for us to go into our cells, I went in and I took my Bible with me. I just laid it down, and it's sitting there, and I'm looking at it, and I thought, well, guess it wouldn't hurt to read a chapter. And I ain't read nothing in 9 years. I've been 9 years on a go to hell binge.
Right.
I'm going to hell, and nothing gonna stop me. And I read a little bit of that Bible, and something started choking me. I started gagging. I couldn't breathe, man. And this thing rose up in me and started growling, and it freaked me out. I shut the Bible. I got up in the bed, and I covered my head up. I was just like a little kid, man. I was like, oh man, I am hallucinating. I'm out there, I'm coming down off heroin at this time, off methamphetamine, off bottles of Valium, drinking, pints of Jim Beam every day. I'd go up, and then to bring myself down, I'd take downers, and I'm hallucinating. So I lay in the bed, get up, try it again. Same thing happens, so finally I start thinking. So I realized something. I got the rope ready, and I got down, and I said Jesus one time. Bad mistake. It literally almost killed me. I mean, it felt like I was going to die. My chest was collapsing. My throat was great big knots in my throat. And when I said Jesus, it wasn't like Jesus. It was like, Jesus. I screamed it. And so,
did you have a cellmate at this time?
Yeah, but he's out.
Oh, okay.
You can go in. See, I was in a perfect place because Gibson County is maximum security, and there are big metal doors and concrete walls, so nobody can hear what's going on in your cell.
Gotcha.
And you can either go in or out. Well, he stayed out. His name's Pat Cashin. He's the one told him, I don't want a Bible. He's one being a jerk, right? Okay. So anyway, so I get down, and I realized, and I said, God, I could say God. Nothing. And I said, send my wife a good Christian husband, send my children a good Christian father, because I'm going to go to hell tonight. And I remember, I was crying, and then I felt it start to raise up. So I just stopped, got up in my bed, got the rope ready. I'm gonna hang myself as soon as my bunkie goes to sleep. My bunkie comes in, they shut the door, he lays down. My Bible's over on the table, and I lay down in the bed. Now I'm in a tight in the place of withdrawals where I can't sleep at night. So I don't have a problem. I'll be up all night anyway. I'm going to, I can't sleep. I'm coming, I'm just a mess. And so I lay there waiting for him to go to sleep, got the rope on my neck. All I got to do is spin around the bed, and let my tippy toes barely touch, choke myself, and I'm gone. And this thing's telling me this in my mind. And so I remember hearing, you're no good anyway. But I thought it was me thinking that. That's the demonic forces will make your own mind think that it's your mind thinking it, when really it's what it's saying to you. So I remember, saying you're no good father, you're no good husband, you let everybody down. So anyway, I'm laying there, I'm thinking this stuff, and next thing I know, I hear a pop. What is that? That the doors were popping, everything was unlocking, and I'm like, what is going on? I heard it start upstairs and go all the way upstairs, the second floor, third floor, then down to our floor. And pop, then pop, our door popped. And I thought, boy, and I'm under the cover. Well, I see my buddy sitting out there, which is not normal. Usually you got to drag him out of bed. And he's sitting out there, and I looked out from under the covers, and he's got this Bible. So I slipped the rope off my head so he don't see it, because he'll tell on me and I'll get put in the hole forever. And I lay it down, and then I slide up under the cover, and I sit up, and he goes, what's wrong with you, man? I said, nothing's wrong with me. And so he said, yes, there is. I heard it. And I said, no. And I figured that demon had screamed out in the night. I had no idea what had happened. So anyway, we go out and eat breakfast. He says he's going to push the button and get moved. I said, don't push the button. I want to know why you want to get moved. I'll get stuck in the hole. Don't do it. So when it's time to go back in after breakfast, and I went back into the room, and I said, "Are you coming?" He said, "No," and he said no like he was scared, And so I went in the room. I said the same prayer: God, would you send my wife a good Christian husband? Now, you're serious when you're praying, God, send your wife a husband. Send my children a good Christian father, because I'm going to hell today. And I said, God, and I said, Jesus, 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 Jesus. And I started crying. Every spirit was gone. The bondage of addiction had died. And God in the night had come, and he answered my prayer. He gave my children a good Christian father. He gave my wife a good Christian husband. But little did I know he was going to do it through my lost, crazy, trashed out self. And I fell on the floor. And I remember scriptures coming back to my mind. And I started screaming, Son of David, have mercy on me. And for 4 hours, Tracy, I laid on the floor in snot and tears, crying out to the Lord Jesus Christ, crying to ask him to save me and to change me and forgive me. And my sins were many, more than I could count, more than I could think of. People I had robbed, people I had stuck guns in their face while their child sitting on them by the couch, in the drug world, crazy things. And I'm, God, and back what I did to the church and did to my pastor and did to the people. And I'm crying out for 4 hours. I laid on the floor in snot and tears. I didn't have enough toilet paper to hardly clean up everything I had cried and snotted for 4 hours. And that day my life changed. Now, to cut this story short, because I can't tell you everything that happened, but God did crazy things to get me to understand. One, they sent me a book by Max Lucado called The Grip of Grace. And I read how Jeffrey Dahmer got saved. And he continues through the book, say, I know what you're thinking as you're reading this stuff. And what I'm thinking is that God is teasing me, because I'm going to be tormented, to make me think, because I kept thinking God was saying, I'm going to do a great work in your life. I'm going to save your wife and your children. I'm going to do great things. And I'm thinking, this is too good to be. And when I opened that last chapter, he said, I know what you're thinking. This is too good to be true, right? And it was awesome. And at the same time, I would get hungry for a certain food. Got hungry. Like I said, I wish we had some pickles. And pickles came in on the lunch thing that day. One day, I said, I wish we had cottage cheese. Cottage cheese came in. My buddy Rodney Knight, that was in there with me then, he said, this is weird.
Was he like, dude, do you want steak? Because I'd really like a steak.
That's what happened. Honest to God, that's what happened. One day after a couple other things, I had a look on my face and I said, you know what? And that, like 2 or 3 of them was like, what? And I said, dude, I am tasting steak. I would love to have a steak. And Rodney Knight fell off of his seat, because in Gibson County Jail, you don't get a lot to eat. I sucked mustard packets. I sucked on them just for flavor. I was hungry. If you didn't have commissary, you was a hungry person. I mean, your meth addict don't gain weight. Like here at Davis County, man, they get fat. You know what I mean? You didn't get, nobody got fat there. You only way you got fat was on commissary. I was sucked mustard packets. Whatever was left on somebody's tray. I hated sweet potatoes. I learned to love them. But anyway, so
we had some guys coming in cleaning from Carlisle. They said they'd take Kool-Aid packets and dump it in their oatmeal, because the oatmeal was so bad and tastes so bad. They just wanted some type of flavor, so they dumped Kool-Aid packets in there.
We'd do anything we could to get some flavor. Yes, it was horrible, but it was the perfect place I needed to be.
Right.
And so Rodney Knight falls off of the seat laughing at me. And he's a big old boy. He made me mad. I wanted to kick him right in the head. I did. Yeah. I wanted to kick him in the head. My old nature was trying to come back. And I thought I ought to just kick him while he's down there, because I probably have a chance while he's on the floor. Right. And he laughed so hard, he cried, And so I said, shut up, man. Just leave me alone, dude. Yeah. And, I just started reading my books, And anyway, man, lunchtime comes around. First one at the door is Rodney Knight. And he's looking out there and he's like, dude, there's something brown on that plate. Well, our bologna wasn't brown. It was kind of,
right.
Weird looking.
Maybe,
weird looking. Yeah, it was weird looking stuff. Right. And he looks out there and he's like, man, I don't know what this is. And the first tray, he grabbed it, pulled it in, and he come running straight to me and had a piece of round steak about the size, bigger than any piece of meat I ever seen in that place.
Right.
And I don't know how God did it.
Right.
I don't know if a truck broke down and they gave it to him. The store called him and had something out, it was going to go out of date, and they got it. But for some reason, but what God done in that was when I found out that God was a personal lover, that he loves you personally and individually. And people would be in there, they would be saying, man, dude, something is going on in your life, because this has to be God. There's no way it's anything else. I mean, there's guys still today from that jail that call me over what happened when God was I call it flirting with me. Like he increased my faith. Like if he's going to give me a piece of steak, if he's worried about my food, he's surely worried about my soul. Mm-hmm. And so some things happen, miracles happen. And then I end up getting to do my time there. I can't tell how it happened. It was just crazy. Judge Penrod, made him bring the camera and showed the arrest. And then and after they showed the arrest, they said, "You've been arrested illegally." And I told them that I wasn't doing things wrong, and they did it wrong. And so they made me a deal at the door, and they said, "We'll send you back to Davis County in 2 weeks." So I come back here to Davis County, got all kinds of charges here. I'm talking about, I remember Judge Dwyer, Honorable Judge Judy Dwyer, awesome lady. I love her to this day. But I remember one time her shutting my file and said, "Get that man out of this place. He makes me sick. I'm going to vomit." And they sent me out. Didn't even let me do court. I'm like, let me get, and that's how she felt about me. So when I come here, I get Mike Chestnut as a lawyer, because Jeff Norris had hired a policeman's wife that was working for him. So it's conflict of interest. Right. I have Mike Chestnut as a lawyer. He's brand new. And I send him over and see if I can, and he come back. He said, "What did you do?" I said, "You don't even want to know. You don't even want to know. It ain't nothing you can even read in their paperwork that they're mad at me about." Right. And it was the stuff that I said, playing games with the cops, doing the stuff that I did. And so I was in there for about 30 days, and the fresh start was coming in, and it was they would give you a Snicker if you come to their little class, so most guys would come. By that time I got so humble, and they had a lot better food in Davis County, man. I was like in heaven, anyway. But I got humble I didn't want their Snicker. And then they'd be like, "You got to take Snicker if you're going to," but I won the word. So I'd take the Snicker, and all the guys, "You don't want to give it to me," And but I remember there was a little Amish guy, and he would stand in the back, and he never hardly said nothing. If he did, he stuttered with kind of real slow speech. And Laverne Graber had told my wife worked at Black Buggy. He said, "I'll go to court with him, and we will see if we can get him a job, and we can get him bonded out." So I'm waiting for my wife to come and visit, because we was going through some really tough times of all the ungodly life we'd been living. And we had decided that we was going to make our marriage work. And so I go out to see my wife, and I sat down, and I look up, and there's that little Amish guy. And I thought, it really made me mad. I thought, what is he doing in here? I'm supposed to be seeing my beautiful wife, and here's this little Amish guy. I said, and he goes, "Hey, how are you doing?" I said, I'm doing okay. So I try to be nice. He said, I feel like I have a word from God for you. And at that moment, it caught me, because I knew he wasn't like that. And a word from God is pretty important in the situation I'm in. And so I said, "Do you know Laverne Graber?" He said, "Yes, I know Laverne Graber well." And they were some way related. He said, I said, "Well, he's going to go to court with me. And I think I may have a small chance of getting out of here and going to work." And he said, "I think you're going to be getting out too, but I have a word." He said, I'm not a prophet." He said, "But have you ever had God tell you to do something and you didn't do it?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "I have too." But he said, "I was driving through town in our work truck, and he said, Lord told me to stop and to see you." So divine timing. He would not been able to see me. He took my wife's visit. Divine timing. He takes my wife. He said, and he said, why are we in this booth? Did you get in trouble? I said, no, my wife was supposed to come and visit me, and you're visiting me. And he's like, he said, I didn't know that. I come through, and he said, God told me to stop and talk to you. And he said, I think you're going to be getting out too, but he told me to have a word for you. And I said, okay. And he said again, this time he points his finger at me. He said, forgettest thou not the Lord? And when he did, it spoke not to my mind, but to my spirit. I knew God was saying, Pete, don't play games with me. If you want me to work these miracles and you want me to do what I said I would do, don't play games with me, because you'll end up worse than you ever were. And right before that, I was in my, I started to say my office. It wasn't an office then, it was in my cell. And I was reading the Bible, and it said, if you believe in God, believe in me also. For in my Father's house are many mansions. But when I read that, he said, when you believe in God, believe in me also. God spoke to me. He said, you always believed in me as God, creator. You always knew that the birds and the flowers and the universe. But he said, and this is way before the Passion, okay? You're talking about back in 99.
Yeah.
He said, you've never believed in me, the God of mercy. And I seen Jesus Christ with his head turned and blood running from his face. And he said, you have never known me as the God of mercy. And I started crying in my cell. And right after that, this visitation happened. He got up to walk to the door. He said, I'll see you. I've got to get going. They're waiting on me. He said, hold on. And he pulls his Bible out of his back pocket. He said, he told me to read something to you. He opened it up and he said, if you believe in God, believe in me also. And I started crying. And he said, what? I said, nothing. I went back to my cell, and I knew that God. And so I went to the courts and had my hearing, was back a couple of days, and they came to me and they said, you know what? You're going to be getting out. Judge Dwyer has put it, you can use your house, your car, money, whatever you want to. So I was released from jail and went to work at the Black Buggy. I went to court. She gave me all my charges. She compiled them. She gave me a long probation and a year on house arrest. And so while I'm working at the Buggy, I'm going house arrest for 6 months. While I'm on house arrest, they arrest me on another drug charge. Are we running out of time?
No.
Okay.
Was this a previous thing? Not.
Yes, it was a drug chat
before
yes,
the Lord.
Yes,
all that
it
stuff,
was in. It was in '98. It was a 2.5-year-old drug charge, a buy, and so they arrest me. I get to my house. There's Channel 10 News. There and so on the news, how the news does things.
Yeah.
They showed me coming out of my house. But then they showed another picture of a big bag of stuff, but it was another guy's house. You know what I mean? So
no, they didn't lie, did they? The news?
They cut it up, you know what I mean? And it was a bad deal. Right. And so they was out there asking me if I had anything to say, but I was stunned. I didn't say nothing. I grinned. They probably thought I was a maniac. I just sat and grinned at them. I was saved, sanctified. My mother-in-law kept pulling in. She drove a black Lincoln Continental, and they was talking about how this black Continental comes screeching into our driveway. But when I get in there, there's Gavin Wilson. He don't care that I say his name. There's Gavin. He tried to kick my door down. My wife opened the door and said, "What are you kicking it for?" She said, "We'll let you in. Come on in."
Yeah.
So him, Davis County Sheriff's Department, they told me later, Pete, if we knew he was coming to your house, we wouldn't have came, because we know. Because I've been down there doing community service at the jail. I mean, I was just doing what God wanted me to do. I had talked to the sheriff. I talked to Steve Cox. I mean, he asked me, questioned me, what was, how did I get right? And what do they do at that jail different than we do here? I said, a lot of things different, but what happened was Jesus, but they couldn't understand. They didn't really understand all that at all. Even though they knew God, I don't think at that time they had seen such a transformation. And God had transformed me from this creepy, messed up drug addict to this smiling, happy, child of God. So
mean, man. This was stories I hear. You were a mean dude.
I was a mess.
Mean dude.
I wouldn't say as much mean as dangerous. Because when you are going to go to hell anyway,
don't got nothing to lose.
Nothing to lose.
Is what you think. So
the thing was don't cross me. That was the thing. Don't cross me. I mean, because I carried a gun and everybody knew I would use it. And I was a mess, man. But when I went into the house. There's the drug dogs all setting, the police. My kids are petting the drug dogs, and I'm like, "What's up here?" Yeah. And they said, "Well, we didn't find nothing." I said, and I told Gavin Wilson, I said, "No, you didn't find nothing, because look over, there's a picture of me and my wife being baptized." And I said, we give our hearts to God. I mean, we've been serving the Lord. I've been going to church for over a year, ever since I got out of jail.
So this was about a year later.
Yeah. It was around
you getting the probation sentence.
Maybe a year and a half, probably a year and a half. So I remember Sheriff Harpstride, he helped me a bunch.
Right.
He got me down in the jail. Abe Knapp was my good friend. Abe at first he didn't trust me. He didn't want me in the jail because that was his people, you know what I mean?
Yep.
And then after I got down there, Abe started really liking me and helping me and helping buy recovery Bibles, and just things were going, things end up being really good. But anyway, so I went to court in Petersburg over the drug dealing charge. And I remember Mike Chestnut going with us, and Laverne was there, and my wife, and the church, and when they got all through it, I told him, I said, the recording you have won't work, because I knew it was a buy, and I said things that will make it not stand up in court. But I have to be honest with you, because I'm a Christian. I did take a 1/4 gram of dope. I put it in bath salts, and that's what she told me to do. And I did take the money. And so, but I said on the tape, it'll say, your money's laying there. That was your dope. I don't know what you're talking about. But I said, being honest, that's what I did. So at the end of it, he said, well, we're going to see what kind of Christian you are. He sentenced me to 6 years in prison. He suspended it to probation, which we thought, yeehaw. Then he said, and you're going to have to do it in Vincennes, Knox County work release. So I'll end up being in Knox County work release for 2 years and 3 months.
Oh my.
Should have been in there for 3 years, but they had a modification thing. You could modify, but they wanted you to modify in their town. So I said, my home, we did let people go to Washington, but we changed that. So my home, my family, I said, I'm not doing that. So I was in there for 2 years and 3 months. I just had a friend of mine, Isaac Davis, called me the other day, and he said, I never met anybody like you. And I said, what do you mean? He said, my life was changed, because he's into music, and he's just all over the world singing, and it's awesome. He's in a band. He's just really tearing stuff up. And he said, I never met a man, in both your pair of pajamas, there were no knees left in your pajamas, where they would let me go down to the handicap shower, and I would pray in there. It was like sand on the floor. My survival, they were shooting up dope. There were ounces of dope in work release at that time. My friend Billy Wagler, which is a strong Christian now, he first one come up trying to get me high. Want to go smoke a cigarette. I said, I don't smoke. And he's like, man, what? And he went and told everybody I was a snitch. Look at him. He's, it was a bad deal. But my survival was in that shower praying to God. And he said, I remember, he said, that affected my life, that you went in there every day and you spent time in the presence of God until you didn't have you didn't have any knees left in your pajamas. And God changed my life. I would think about when I was sitting there with the way they was treating people, I would think, you know what? I would have peanut butter and jelly on that table. When we paid $15 for a phone call, I'd think, you know what? I'd have a free phone where they could call their family. I had no idea, Tracy, that God was setting me up to start a thing called Lighthouse Recovery Center. All the stuff that I thought about then, I thought I would have NA classes, AA classes, Bible classes, recovery classes. I would have something going on here, because we only had one class, and that's because the state made them do it. Besides that, you went to work, you came back, paid your fees, went to work, come back. That's all you done. But on the weekend, since they didn't have church service in there, we could take people to church. So before long, we had a 60-some passenger, 66 passenger van, a bus. It was full. The whole work release would unload and come in. We'd go to church. Yeah. And so, God.
Where are you guys going?
We was going at that time at Victory at the
but there was a church in
just a couple blocks down.
We want
United Pentecostal Tabernacle.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we'd take that. We'd fill the place up, man.
Yeah.
It was crazy. They would all come. So we did that the whole time I was in work release. And then when I modified, what happened was I went to Petersburg to modify. I really had a non-modifiable sentence. But when Judge Baker was in there then, he looked at it, and then Judge Beesterfield that's there now, he was prosecutor, and he said, Your Honor, this man came in here clean and doing really good. And he's been over there for 2 years and 3 months. And he asked him, said, where's the work release at? Because they usually come to stop you. He said they have nothing. He's never been wrote up. And that was a miracle all by itself. He said he's never been in any trouble. And the judge looked right at me. He said, you want to go home today, son? And I said, yes, sir. He said, go pack your stuff. So I went and packed my stuff. And I went home on the same corner where I dealt drugs, done the stuff, all the crazy stuff that I done. I'm on that same corner being a light. People come. For a long time, I didn't let nobody in. After a while, I started, talking to people, sitting on the porch. We started while I was on house arrest, because I had to go back on house arrest for 6 months because they had taken me off of it to do this other sentence. So while I was on house arrest, I met with Mike Healy. And we met down in front of this little building that Laverne Graber had let us use. And there we started what was called Lighthouse addiction classes. And as we started doing classes, one night we had, 5 people, 10 people, then we had 30 people, then we had, then went to 50 some people, then we had 60, then we had to open the front door and people had to sit out front. And it just got bigger and bigger and bigger. And so God gracefully ended up giving us the building we have now on Main Street. And I thought that is plenty big enough, man. We'll never fill that up. Boy, about 3 months later, the whole room is full. They're standing down the hallway. We got the front door open, and that's when Maury asked us when they was down in the old
Coca-Cola building right next to it.
Next to it. Yeah, it used to be like a used clothing store, and they were in there. And he said, "Hey, you want to use this?" And we got down there, and we're 200 or 300 people on a Friday night, And so
I actually led worship there for you guys.
Yes. It was crazy. I remember some people, just church people coming, just saying, "Hey, we just wanted to get some of this." What I mean? Just from different churches,
Right.
And so, we started the little class, and it just had went crazy. And so we realized, on Main Street, we realized we needed a place for people to stay, and we ended up fixing the upstairs up, and we had men in it, about 13 young men off the streets. At this time, nobody come from probation or courts. And we had men in there. We began to develop a policy, which we needed really bad. And I wouldn't even want to talk about the beginning days, having the police over and skunk bud and in the resident. But,
you learn a lot.
Yes. But we developed the policy. And then one day I was in there and I worked 3 days for another man, and I worked 4 days for the Lighthouse. I didn't get paid anything from the Lighthouse. And I worked 3 days, and I took a pay cut because I went from Black Buggy to this guy, but I was able to work 3 days for him and 4 for the Lighthouse. And I was in there, and I remember a young lady pulled up, and she said, "Can I talk to you?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Working." She said, and I told her what I was doing, 3 days over there and 4 at the Lighthouse. And she said, "Well, if I gave you $10,000, could you be, could you end up having this place paying you correctly in a certain amount?" Because I watched how much money they took from us at work release. And I said, I think I could do that, because we charged at that time it was $70 a week. So I thought, okay, I've got this many guys. I got this much coming from these 3 churches. I said, yeah, I could do it. And so we took that $10,000, me and my wife, put it in the bank, frugally used it. And by the time we had it, everything was set up, and the Lighthouse started paying me a check every week. And so we was in there for about, probably 8 months. And some things had happened with the county farm out there. And I was trying to help some other folk get it. That's going to turn it into a women's facility. And so some things happened, and they couldn't get it. And I walked out of our front door of our building at 311 East Main here. And I'm walking down to the bank, because at that time I did everything, as far as deposits and everything. Yep. You know what I'm talking about. And so I'm doing the deposits. And as I walked into the bank, the Lord said, "I want you to take the county farm." And it threw me into a cold sweat. I was like, I'm thinking in my mind, I can't even think what I'm telling the teller. I don't even know what happened in there, I'm thinking, God, I don't want the county farm. I seen that light bill was like, 900 to 1,400 and all kinds, and the gas bill was out the roof. And I said, God, if this ain't you, shut this door tight. And if it is you, then you tell me. And I still have the phone, the first Lighthouse phone I ever had. Remember one time I had 7,000 phone calls in 1 month. they come to me. They said, dude, you got to get help. I said, you ain't telling me nothing. I still got it at home. It's that little flip phone. It was a fancy one, had the MP3 player with the little circles on the side. That thing rung, and I flipped it open, and it was Beth Davis. And she said, Pete, the county commissioners just called me. They want to know if you're willing to take the county farm. I said, oh, my God. Okay, I'll talk to you later. I hung up, and I went in my office, and I cried. So I asked him, open it or close it. So we went out to county farm with 13 men and immediately turned this facility into a women and children's facility. From that point, it began to blossom. It began to grow. And, you know, I knew we were still going to Vincent's church. We'd take all the lighthouse over to Vincent's. And God dealt with me, and he said, you know, you need to have a church over here. So I think it was 2010, I believe it was. Somewhere around there, talking with Maury, which me and Maury had become very good friends. And he said, hey, you know, you can use our church. And then you guys was in transition at that time, moving over to the big church, the old Catholic school. And so they gave us a room down there. And, you know, I thought, man, you know, this thing will seat 130 people, you know, this is it, you know. And we was down there. We wasn't down there probably 5 months. And Maury said, you gotta move upstairs, you know. So they graciously loaned us their church. And I always made a joke because before we ever owned a church, we had a $15,000 PA system. So I always said, you can tell when you're Pentecostal when you have when you have a $15,000 PA system, but you don't have a building. Yeah. So we was upstairs, you know, and things was going awesome and growing and, you know, and just wonderful. And then after a little while, we decided we wanted our own church. So we ended up buying the church down on 1419 West Main Street. And it was an awesome experience. The only thing is it couldn't hold the capacity. So we couldn't have the Friday night meeting anymore, which cut us down from a meeting that was probably pulling in at least 200 to 300 people still, and from everywhere. They just come from everywhere. And so we went to go into regular church. So we did lose that meeting, which I hated, but we've been down there now. I think we went into the church in maybe 2008, somewhere around there, remodeled the church. Don't remember exactly what the date was that we got into it. And we've been using it ever since then. And so, and then right now we're in the process. One block over, right past 21st Street. I say right in between West End and Boxtown. And so we bought that field, 23 acres, and we're in the process of building, you know, somewhere.
Got the foundation laid already.
Yes, foundations. It's going to be 72 by 248 with the upper level in the center, classrooms, 500 seat sanctuary, you know, but God has provided. And so we're excited, man, about what God is doing. And, you know, and the thing with the felonies, when I got done, I had like 3, 4, 5 felonies, something like that. A bunch of them they dropped to charge me with others. But anyway, probably about 5 years ago, you know, I went and talked to the lawyer, and he said, yeah, we can do this. And so I have no felonies now. You know, I still want to get my GED, but the gospel and the kingdom has kept me so busy. Every time I get to studying where I'm almost ready to take the test, I have to quit. And when I go back, it's even harder and I got to learn more. Now I'm 55 and I still want to get my GED. You know what I mean? I want to finish what I quit way back then. I mean, that's how important it was, you know. So God has just been very good to us. And, you know, so the lighthouse is, you know, now they're into recovery works, and, you know, the state helps out with stuff and sends us people. Prisons send us people from all over our state and Illinois and other places. I mean, I have people come from California, Florida, Mexico. I mean, it's crazy. And, you know, we've never done any great big advertisement. Our social media has got really better here lately, but people come from everywhere. Lives are changed, families being put back together. You know, it's just an awesome thing what God has done. And
you guys have been amazing partners for the Powerhouse through the years. And,
yes.
And I know, like you talked to me a little bit about it, but you would see that, hey, if the Powerhouse can catch some of these kids before they don't have to go to the Lighthouse. Me and you both would love to be out of a job.
Yeah.
I would love that the Powerhouse wouldn't have to be here, right?
Right.
And I love that the Lighthouse would never have to be there. However, we understand the state of sin. We understand that we're human, and we all have fallen short, obviously, but by the grace of God are we saved.
Right.
And so it's a good thought, but because of sin, probably not going to happen, right? So you're like, hey, if we can pour into you guys some to help you guys out, then maybe that would decrease some of the people around here that would have to come in. So and so I appreciate first of all your openness and going through, and I literally have all these areas I wanted to hit, and you hit them without me even telling you what they were. So you got them already taken care of. And but I really want, especially I'm hoping that some of the kids that come here hear this. I hope they see it. I did a podcast earlier this morning, and I said, hey, I want my kids to have a really boring testimony. And so hopefully the kids won't hear this or see it. I don't think they will, and say, oh, well, we'll see if I can go that far as what Pete did, then I'll change. And it's like, no, don't go down that path.
What I didn't throw in there is this. Most of my friends that I'm talking to you about, the drug dealers, they're dead. Every one of them's dead, except for one. When my dad dropped us off, it was Pete, Pat, Scott, Vivian, and April. Pat died of a drug overdose in 2005. Scott died in 1988 on the train tracks, drunk and high. That most people don't make it back. The testimony is of the love of Jesus Christ.
Yeah, that's right.
I said my greatest regret is that I did not love God and understand the love of God when I was a young person. And I would have never went through some of the stuff I went through. And my brothers may have never died in the condition that they died in. I have to face every day that they may have died in a lost and undone condition. Now people throw at me, you don't know what they prayed before they died, and all that. But it ain't, what I mean? I just don't know that I'll ever see them again.
Right.
And that's fact from the Word of God. I don't know that.
Correct.
And so my word to people is this: my cousin Greg has never smoked a cigarette. He's in the same family and all the craziness, but he chose Jesus. He was in that same altar that I talked about, but he chose Jesus and he answered his call. And I was seen him the other day I just sat and looked at him and grinned. Greg is an awesome man of God, and that's the kind of people we got to let our kids know, man. Listen, you may not come back from it.
Yeah, that's right.
So many people, and it's worse now than it ever was.
That's right.
Because of fentanyl and heroin, people was afraid of COVID. I said, you know what? And I understand it's a bad thing. But count how many's died of overdoses and suicide in this period, in this time.
Yeah, can we not label that a pandemic, right?
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yep. And it's starting earlier and earlier, it seems, right?
Yes.
And I know there's some outliers of kids who had started it, in the 80s or whatever, but it's increasingly getting younger and younger. I mean, you've had conversations about this too, where it used to be when I first was here, when we first met and I was here, teenagers was the spot. You get them at teenagers, right? You might have a shot, right? Yeah. Well, it's 8, 9 years old. Yeah. It's 8, 9, 10, and it's getting just so much younger.
Yes.
And it's not. You can come in here and spend 5 minutes and figure that out, right?
Oh, yeah.
And we don't have 8 and 9 year olds, but you can hear the stories and hear their kids and their siblings who are at home and different things like that. And so it's happening, but man, I have so much hope in the fact that God is our hope, and that I'm here. God has put me here. God's put you here to share the gospel, the fact that Jesus died for a wretch just like me, for a wretch just like you. And there is, just like that, one of the guys in your story was saying, like, there is no one that can't have that hope.
That's right.
There is no one. And that's what continues to push, I know you, and I know it continues to push me to build relationships, the people around us, and share the gospel with them. So if anybody's watching this, just know that man, his story is by the grace of God. Every single day of our life is numbered, and God knows that number.
Yes.
And so don't take that for granted to think, well, when I get older, I'll do that. Or when I get at this spot in my life, I'll take care of that. I'll quit. I'll do that, because you just don't know that that's going to happen.
No, I was thinking as we was just talking a minute ago, right now in my closet, I have a box of ashes from a young man that came to our facility, and he said he wanted to go help his mom. And so he left the facility, was at his mom's for about a half hour, and went somewhere else. And within 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, he was gone. They found him at a friend's house, overdose. We have been asked to help with some funerals here lately, about 3 or 4 different funerals, and it's all from overdose. You know what I mean? It ain't like it used to be. It ain't like, and I know they're trying to legalize marijuana, and this really ticks me off, because we were taught forever that alcohol and marijuana was a gateway
drugs, right?
And now they're saying, now there's, because of money, that it's okay. And that's just the truth. It's all, the love of money is the root of all evil. And now they're trying to say, okay, well, marijuana's all right, but nobody stays with just marijuana. You know what I mean? I have people that'll throw marijuana in the trash to smoke spice, which whacks their brains all the way out, because when you want to get high, the only reason you want to get high or get a buzz is because you don't like something about yourself.
And 9 times out of 10, you're trying to suppress something inside of you, and really all that is just your sin, right?
Yes.
We're just trying to suppress our sin, to run from our sin, and then sin on top of sin on top of sin creates a very sinful lifestyle, right? And that's where it just keeps going a little further.
And some people are running from other people's sins, like abuse in their life, molestation, whatever it was, something else somebody else did to them. They try to drown that in getting high or getting under the influence,
because the anger and the unforgiveness and all that stuff that comes in. Absolutely. And so Pete, man, I'm excited for people to hear this. I want them to hear it. I appreciate you coming and like I said, just being so open and honest about your lifestyle and about where you're at now. It's undeniable what God can do, and we can't. I really like the stories where I can't put my finger on it, but I can tell that it's God's hand that did it, right?
Yes.
And because that He gets all the credit and all the glory for that. Whenever I can't even rationalize it in my own brain, right? And so I appreciate that, guys. If you like this, if you know someone that needs to hear this, that you want them to hear this, just share it with them. Copy this, give it to them, hand it out. It's so simple on Facebook to do that. So simple on YouTube, just to send this to someone that you think needs to hear this. But we appreciate every one of you, Pete. We appreciate you. Thank you so much. And we love you guys, and we'll see you next month.